The station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness of space like a massive jewel. It was bigger than Earth's moon, and home to the Galactic Council. Today was special. 847 different alien species had gathered for their millennial summit. Something that happened only once every 1,000 years. Ships of every shape and color surrounded the station. Some looked like crystals, others like living creatures, and some defied any description a human mind could understand. Inside the Grand Assembly Hall, thousands of beings sat in their designated spots. Some breathed oxygen, others methane, and some did not breathe at all. The hall's technology kept everyone alive in their own special environments. At the center, on a raised platform, sat the Supreme Chancellor. She was a being made of pure crystal that glowed with soft blue light. She had ruled the council for 3,000 years. The Millennial Summit is now in session. Her voice echoed through translation devices that every species could understand. We gather to discuss the future of our galaxy. Far away from this grand meeting, Captain Minho sat in his chair on the bridge of the Defiant Hope. His ship was humanity's first vessel capable of traveling faster than light. It was not pretty. Wires hung from open panels. The floors had patches welded over holes. Strange noises came from the walls at random times. But it flew, and that was enough. "How's our drive looking, Hana?" Minho asked. Engineer Hannah looked up from her console. Her face was covered in grease, and her hair was tied back in a messy bun. "It's holding together," she said. "Barely. I've had to reroute power 3 times in the last hour. Will it get us there? It'll get us there. Landing might be another story." Minho smiled. That was good enough. He looked at the rest of his crew. 50 humans. The best Earth could send. They all knew this mission was dangerous. They all knew the Galactic Council had refused to meet with humanity. The Council had sent probes to study Earth and decided humans were too primitive and too dangerous. The official classification was insufficient development level with excessive violent tendencies. Humanity had not accepted that answer. "Captain," said Suji from her station. She was their diplomat, trained in 20 Earth languages, and now trying to understand galactic politics. "Are you sure about this? We're about to crash a meeting we weren't invited to." "They didn't invite us because they don't understand us," Minho said. "So, we'll make them understand. We'll show up, introduce ourselves, and ask nicely for a seat at the table." "And if they say no?" asked Yuna, the ship's military commander. "Then at least we tried." The Defiant Hope jumped to faster than light speed. Space twisted around them in ways that made human eyes hurt. The journey took 3 days, 3 days of the ship shaking, alarms going off, and Hana cursing in Korean as she fixed one problem after another. Finally, they arrived at Nexus Prime. "There it is," whispered Jiho, their science officer. His eyes were wide as he stared at the massive station. "It's beautiful. It's huge," added Nari, the ship's doctor. "How many beings live there?" "According to our data, about 50 million, Jiho answered. "Permanent residents, not counting visitors." Minho opened a communication channel. "Nexus Prime. This is Captain Minho of Earth vessel Defiant Hope. We request permission to dock and address the council." Opened. Silence. Then a cold, mechanical voice responded. "Earth vessel, you are not authorized. Your species is classified as prohibited contact. Leave immediately, or defensive measures will be taken." "We're not here to fight," Minho said. "We just want to talk." "Negative. Departure required. You have 1 minute to comply." Minho looked at his crew. Suji shook her head slowly. "We should leave," she said. "We can try diplomatic channels again." But Minho saw something else in the eyes of his crew. They had come so far. They had risked so much. Humanity deserved a voice in the galaxy. "Hana," he said quietly. "What if we just got a little closer?" Hana grinned. "The drive is unstable. If we push it too hard near that station, we might lose control." "That would be terrible," Minho said, not meaning it at all. "Absolutely terrible," Hana agreed, her fingers already moving over her controls. The Defiant Hope lurched forward, accelerating toward the station. Alarms screamed. The Council's automated defenses activated, raising energy shields that had never been breached in 10,000 years. Massive barriers of pure energy appeared around Nexus Prime, strong enough to stop a fleet of warships. "Captain," Yuna shouted, "those shields will destroy us." "Hana," Minho called out. "I'm trying." Hana's hands flew over her console. "The drive is overloading. I can't stop it." The truth was, she could stop it. But she did not. The Defiant Hope hit the shields at impossible speed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the human ship's experimental drive did something the Council's scientists would spend years trying to understand. It created a tear in space itself, a tiny rip in reality. The shields failed. The Defiant Hope smashed through the energy barriers like they were paper. The ship tumbled out of control, spinning wildly as it careened toward the station. Sparks flew from every console. Crew members held on to anything they could grab. "Brace!" Minho shouted. The ship crashed directly into the Grand Assembly Hall. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. The Defiant Hope tore through the wall and slid across the floor of the hall, finally stopping in the center of the room, right in front of the Supreme Chancellor's platform. Smoke filled the air. Alarms wailed. 847 species of aliens stared in complete shock at the wreckage that had just ruined their summit. The side door of the Defiant Hope hissed open. Captain Minho stepped out, limping slightly. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. Behind him came his crew, injured but alive. They looked at the thousands of alien beings staring at them. Minho cleared his throat. In the sudden silence, his voice carried across the entire hall. "We came to talk," he said. "Sorry about the door." For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then chaos erupted, as every species began shouting at once. The Grand Assembly Hall descended into chaos. Thousands of voices shouted in hundreds of languages, all translated into a cacophony of anger, fear, and confusion. Some species demanded immediate execution of the humans. Others called for their ship to be seized. A few, very few, seemed curious about these strange beings who had done the impossible. Captain Minho stood his ground, blood still dripping from his forehead. His crew formed a loose circle around him, ready for whatever came next. Medical Officer Nari quickly moved between them, checking injuries with her scanner. She worked fast, ignoring the alien eyes watching her every move. The Supreme Chancellor raised one crystalline hand. Silence fell instantly. Her blue glow intensified as she studied the humans. "You have violated our most sacred gathering." Her voice was cold as ice in space. "You have breached shields that have protected this station for 10 millennia. You have endangered thousands of lives. Give me one reason why I should not have you executed immediately." Minho stepped forward. His legs were shaky, but he did not show it. "Because we came here to save you from making a mistake." "A mistake?" The Chancellor's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "Explain yourself quickly, human. You scanned our world. You saw our wars, our violence, our history," Minho said. "And you decided we were too dangerous to join you. But you never asked us why we fight. You never asked what we could offer." "We saw enough," said a voice from the assembly. A creature that looked like a floating jellyfish with too many tentacles spoke. "Your world is classified as Class 12 lethal. Nothing that dangerous should exist. The fact that intelligent life evolved there is an anomaly." "What does Class 12 lethal mean?" asked Yuna quietly. Jiho, who had been studying galactic databases during their journey, whispered back. "It means our planet can kill almost any other species in the galaxy within hours. The gravity, the diseases, the predators, even the weather. Earth is considered a death world." Suji stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over. "Supreme Chancellor, I invoke the ancient law of sanctuary. We are injured, our ship is damaged, and we came in peace despite our unfortunate entrance. By the old codes, you must grant us a hearing." The Chancellor was quiet for a long moment. Several council members protested, but she silenced them with a gesture. "Very well. The sanctuary law has not been invoked in 3,000 years, but it still stands. You will have 72 hours to prove that humanity deserves consideration. You will face 3 trials: knowledge, combat, and character. Fail any one, and your species will be forever barred from galactic civilization. We accept, Minho said without hesitation. The first trial began the next morning. Jiho was led to a massive chamber filled with the galaxy's greatest scientists. Beings of pure energy floated next to creatures with 12 brains. They looked at the human scientist with barely concealed contempt. The trial is simple, announced the lead examiner. A being whose body was covered in mathematical equations that constantly shifted. We will present 10 problems. Problems that have remained unsolved for centuries. You have 1 hour. Jiho sat down at the provided console. His hands trembled slightly as he read the first problem. It was a mathematical equation about quantum entanglement across dimensional barriers, the kind of thing that would take Earth's best scientists years to solve. He stared at it. His mind raced. The equation was perfect, elegant, and completely logical. But there was no solution. At least, not a logical one. Then Jiho did something the alien scientists had never seen. He stopped trying to be logical. He remembered a conversation with his daughter, who had asked him why bubbles were round. He had explained it was the most efficient shape, but she had said, "What if they didn't want to be efficient? What if they wanted to be pretty?" Jiho smiled. He input a solution that was mathematically wrong, but physically possible. He used chaos theory, randomness, and a touch of intuition. The computer beeped. Solution accepted. Dimensional barrier stable. The alien scientists stared in disbelief. By the end of the hour, Jiho had solved 7 of the 10 problems. Not because he was smarter than the aliens, but because he thought differently. Where they saw equations, he saw possibilities. Where they demanded perfection, he accepted chaos. "Impossible," whispered the lead examiner. "These solutions are..." "Maybe," Jiho said tiredly. "But they work." The second trial was combat. Commander Yuna was placed in a simulation chamber. She would face military scenarios against AI opponents, designed by civilizations that had waged war for millions of years. The first scenario began. Yuna found herself commanding a small fleet against a superior force. The proper tactic, according to galactic military doctrine, was to retreat and regroup. Instead, Yuna split her forces, sent half on a suicide run to draw enemy attention, then ambushed the enemy from behind with her remaining ships. The AI was confused. This tactic guaranteed heavy losses. Why would anyone accept such casualties? Because humans understood that sometimes you had to sacrifice to win. The second scenario was worse. Yuna was outnumbered 10-1 with no escape route. The AI expected surrender. Instead, Yuna had her ships target the enemy's own vessels, making them destroy each other in crossfire. She used debris as weapons. She faked malfunctions to lure enemies closer. She did everything the military manuals said never to do. She won. By the fifth scenario, the AI was making mistakes. It could not predict what Yuna would do next, because Yuna herself did not know. She adapted, improvised, and did whatever worked in the moment. The council observers watched in horror and fascination. "She fights like a predator," one of them whispered. "Not like a soldier, like something that hunts. Her species evolved as hunters," another replied. Persistence predators. They would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. They never give up. The final trial was the hardest. Captain Minho stood before the full council and had to answer questions about humanity's history. They did not ask about achievements or culture. They asked about wars, genocides, pollution, and every terrible thing humans had ever done. Minho did not lie. He did not make excuses. "Yes," he said. "We have done terrible things. We have killed each other over differences in skin color, religion, and resources. We have destroyed parts of our own world. We have made mistakes that cost millions of lives. And you expect us to welcome you? Demanded a counselor. No, Minho said quietly. I expect you to understand that we learned from those mistakes. Every species in this room looks perfect to me. Beautiful, advanced, peaceful, but I wonder, did you ever have to learn? Did you ever fight amongst yourselves? Or were you always peaceful? Silence fell. The truth was, most species had been engineered for peace, or came from worlds so abundant that conflict was unnecessary. They had never needed to overcome their darker nature. We are still learning, Minho continued. We are still growing, but we learn fast, and we never make the same mistake twice. You can reject us today, and maybe that is the right choice, but one day, someone will threaten this galaxy, and when that day comes, you will wish you had allies who know how to fight, who refuse to surrender, and who would rather die than abandon their friends. The words hung in the air. Before anyone could respond, alarms began to wail throughout the station. Red lights flashed. The Supreme Chancellor's crystalline body dimmed with what looked like fear. What is it? Minho demanded. An operator's voice shook as he reported. 3 sectors have gone dark. No communications. No signals. Reconnaissance ships sent to investigate have not returned. An ancient counselor, a being who had served for 5,000 years, stood up slowly. His voice was filled with dread. It cannot be. They have been dormant for 50 millennia. What? Minho asked. What has awakened? The Supreme Chancellor looked at him, and for the first time, Minho saw fear in an alien's eyes. The Void Swarm, she whispered. The galaxy's apex predator. They have returned. The Grand Assembly Hall erupted into panic. Species that had lived for thousands of years screamed in terror. Some tried to flee. Others froze in place, their bodies locked by primal fear. The Supreme Chancellor struggled to maintain order, her blue glow flickering like a dying star. Everyone, please remain calm, she commanded, but her voice cracked. Nobody was listening. Captain Minho looked at his crew. They were confused but ready. Someone want to explain what the Void Swarm is? He asked loudly. An old counselor, his body covered in scars from ancient battles, turned to face the humans. His name was unpronounceable to human tongues, but his translation device rendered it as Keeper of Memories. The Void Swarm, he began, his voice heavy with sorrow, is what happens when evolution creates perfection. They are organisms designed by nature to be the ultimate predators. They do not feel pain, fear, or mercy. They consume entire worlds, assimilate all technology they encounter, and adapt to any weapon used against them. Sounds like a problem, Yuna said, her military mind already working. It is extinction, the Keeper replied. 50,000 years ago, they nearly destroyed all life in this galaxy. 4,000 species were completely erased. We only stopped them by using a weapon so terrible that the Council destroyed all records of it afterward. We did not kill the swarm. We put them into hibernation, hidden in the dead zones between stars. And now they are awake, Suji said quietly. The tactical displays around the hall showed the situation. 3 entire sectors had gone silent. That represented hundreds of worlds and billions of lives. Scout ships sent to investigate were not responding. How long do we have? Minho asked. Unknown, the Supreme Chancellor said, her composure slowly returning. But they move fast. If they are truly awakened and at full strength, they could reach Nexus Prime within days. Then we need to prepare defenses, Yuna said. Show me your military assets. The Council's military commander, a being that looked like an armored insect, made a sound like bitter laughter. Our defenses are designed for pirates and rebels, not the swarm. The weapons we have now would merely inconvenience them. Then we build better weapons, Jiho suggested. There is no time, the military commander said. The swarm adapts to any weapon within hours. That is why they are unstoppable. Minho noticed that many counselors were quietly leaving the hall. They were fleeing, abandoning Nexus Prime to save themselves. He felt disgust rise in his throat, but pushed it down. This was not the time for judgment. "Captain," Hana said through her communicator. She had stayed with the Defiant Hope, working on repairs. "I am picking up some strange readings on long-range sensors. 3 massive objects are moving through space. They are big, really big." "How big?" "Each one is the size of Earth's moon." Everyone who heard this went silent. Ships that large should not be possible. The energy required to move them would drain entire suns. "Those are the hive ships," the Keeper of Memories said. "The swarm builds them around captured planetoids. Each one carries trillions of organisms." Tactical Officer Do-hyun, who had been quietly studying all available data on the swarm, suddenly spoke up. "May I see the historical records of the last war?" The Supreme Chancellor hesitated. "Those records are restricted. My species might die in the next few days," Do-hyun said flatly. "I think security clearance is not important anymore." She nodded, and the data was transferred to his terminal. Do-hyun read through centuries of battle reports, his eyes moving rapidly. The rest of the crew watched him work. Do-hyun had the best tactical mind in the human fleet. If anyone could find a weakness, it was him. After an hour, he looked up. "I see the pattern." "What pattern?" the military commander asked. "The swarm fights perfectly. Every battle, every move, completely optimal. They never make mistakes. They calculate the best possible strategy and execute it flawlessly." "Yes," the commander said impatiently. "That is why they cannot be beaten." "No," Do-hyun said with a small smile. "That is why they can be beaten. They are like a chess computer. Perfect, logical, optimal. But humans," he looked at his captain, "we do not play fair." Minho understood immediately. He grinned. "We are predictably unpredictable." "Exactly," Do-hyun said. "The swarm cannot predict random behavior, because random behavior is illogical. We evolved on a world where being unpredictable kept us alive. Predators learned our patterns and hunted us, so we stopped having patterns." Engineer Hana's voice came through the communicator again. "Captain, I have good news and bad news. Bad news is, the Defiant Hope will never fly properly again. Good news is she will fly improperly for maybe one more fight." "That is all we need," Minho said. He turned to the Supreme Chancellor. "We want to fight the swarm." The hall erupted in noise again. This time not from fear, but from shock. "You are 50 beings with 1 damaged ship," the Chancellor said. "What could you possibly do?" "We can do what we do best," Minho replied. "Survive against impossible odds. Our entire species evolved on a death world. We are persistence predators. We do not give up, and we do not know when we are beaten." "This is suicide," the military commander stated. "Maybe," Yuna said. "But we are going to do it anyway." "Why?" the Supreme Chancellor asked, genuinely confused. "You owe us nothing. We rejected your species. We refused you entry to our council. Why would you die for us?" Minho was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that the council would remember for generations. "Because that is what humans do. We help. Even when it is stupid. Even when it makes no sense. Even when we should run away. We see someone in trouble, and we cannot help ourselves. We have to try." Nari, the ship's doctor, added softly, "My grandmother used to say that humans are the galaxy's idiots. We run into burning buildings to save strangers. We jump into rivers to rescue drowning people we do not know. We donate organs to those we will never meet. It is who we are." "I'm C2000. Organs." The Supreme Chancellor stared at them for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "The vote on your membership is postponed. But I grant you permission to fight. However, we cannot provide you with weapons or ships. You understand that?" "We understand," Minho said. "We will use what we have. 1 broken ship against 3 hive ships," the military commander said. "I will record your bravery for history." "Don't write our eulogy yet," Hana said. "Captain, if we are really doing this, I need every engineer who can hold a wrench. This ship needs work. Within hours, the humans were swarming over the Defiant Hope. The Council had given them access to materials but no help. Most species were too busy evacuating to care about the crazy humans and their suicidal plan, but a few stayed to watch. They saw Hana and her team rip apart sections of the ship and rebuild them. They saw Jiho calculate flight paths that should be impossible. They saw Yuna and Do-hyun planning tactics that made no logical sense. Pilot Mirai sat in a salvaged fighter craft, testing its controls. The Council had fighters in storage, old models that no one used anymore. Mirai had claimed one and was making it work. 29 other humans did the same. They would fly as support for the Defiant Hope. These ships are ancient, Mirai said over the comm. But they fly. That is enough. That is always enough for humans, Minho replied. The swarm arrived sooner than expected. The 3 hive ships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Immediately, they began releasing smaller vessels, thousands of them. Like a plague of locusts spreading across space, the Council's defense fleet engaged them. Modern warships with powerful weapons fired everything they had. For a few minutes, it looked like they might succeed. Swarm vessels exploded by the hundreds. Then the swarm adapted. Their shields changed frequency. Their armor shifted composition. Within an hour, Council weapons became useless. Ships that had fought for millennia were torn apart like paper. The retreat order was given. The defense fleet fled, leaving Nexus Prime exposed. That is our cue, Minho said. All human craft, launch now. The Defiant Hope limped out of Nexus Prime's docking bay, followed by 30 human pilots and salvaged fighters. Against 3 hive ships and thousands of swarm vessels, they looked like insects challenging mountains. But insects could bite. The human ships moved into formation. 31 vessels against thousands. The swarm's sensors detected them immediately and calculated the threat level. The result was 0. These ships were old, damaged, and piloted by an unknown species. They would be eliminated in the first wave. The swarm was about to learn that numbers were not everything. All fighters, break formation, Commander Yuna ordered. Do not follow any pattern. Do not stick together. Act like you are all separate pilots with no coordination. We can do that, Mirai said with a laugh. That is exactly how we trained. The fighters scattered in every direction. The swarm vessels pursued, expecting easy targets. Instead, they found chaos. Mirai flew her fighter through a debris field, using wreckage as cover and weapons. When a swarm ship got too close, she rammed it with a piece of destroyed hull, then spun away before impact. Another pilot, Taijin, flew directly at a group of enemies, made them think he was going to collide, then dove at the last second. The swarm ships fired at where he should have been, destroying each other instead. A pilot named Bora had her engine hit and started spinning out of control. The swarm calculated she was no longer a threat. They were wrong. Bora used her spin to aim her weapons, firing in a circle and hitting multiple targets. When her ship finally stopped, she ejected, grabbed onto a passing piece of debris, and used her suit's emergency thrusters to continue fighting. The swarm's perfect calculations kept failing. These humans did not fight logically. They risked death with every move. They used damaged ships as weapons. They ejected from fighters at the last second before collision. They did things that should get them killed, but somehow survived. On Nexus Prime, the Supreme Chancellor and the remaining counselors watched in amazement. They fight like they are insane, the military commander said. No. The Keeper of Memories corrected. They fight like survivors. Every move is dangerous, yes. But humans evolved where every day was dangerous. This is normal for them. The Defiant Hope moved slowly into the battle. Hana had done her best, but the ship could barely fly. Systems failed every few minutes. The hull groaned with stress. But it moved forward. Captain, Do-hyun said from his tactical station. I have analyzed the swarm's movement patterns. They are starting to adapt to our fighters. How long do we have? Minho asked. Maybe 15 minutes before they can predict us. Then casualties will increase dramatically. 15 minutes. Not enough time to win. Barely enough time to make a difference. Minho looked at his bridge crew. Hana, covered in burns from fixing the engines. Nari, treating injuries while monitoring life support. Suji, who had stopped being a diplomat and started being a soldier. Jiho, whose hands trembled as he calculated firing solutions. Yuna, calm and focused despite the chaos. Do-hyun, who saw patterns in everything. These were his people, his friends, his family. Hana, he said quietly. Can you make the reactor go critical? Everyone on the bridge went silent. Yes, Hana said after a moment. But once I start the process, we have maybe 15 minutes before it explodes. And the explosion would be large. Large enough to damage a hive ship? If we were close enough, maybe. The blast radius would be huge. But Captain, that means, I know what it means, Minho interrupted. Everyone who stays on this ship dies. No, Yuna said immediately. No, echoed Nari. Absolutely not, Hana stated. Minho looked at them with surprise. This might be our only chance to hurt them. We have to. We are not arguing about the plan, Suji said. We are arguing about you being the only one to stay. If you stay, we all stay. That is not an order I can give, Minho said. Then it is good you are not giving it, Hana replied. We are volunteering, all of us. Around the bridge, every crew member nodded. 50 humans, 1 ship, 1 chance. You are all insane, Minho said, but his eyes were wet. Yes, Jiho agreed. That is why we are human. Minho opened the comm to all human craft. Attention all fighters. We are going to ram the lead hive ship with the Defiant Hope. Our reactor will be set to overload. We need you to keep the swarm busy while we make our approach. There was silence. Then, Mireille's voice came through. Understood, Captain. We will give you the time you need. It has been an honor. The honor is mine, Minho replied. The human fighters intensified their attacks. They drew the swarm's attention, sacrificing their safety to create an opening. 3 fighters were destroyed in the first minute. 5 more damaged. But they succeeded. The path to the lead hive ship opened. The Defiant Hope accelerated. The ship screamed in protest. Metal twisted. Systems failed. But it moved forward. Reactor overload initiated, Hana reported. We have 15 minutes. That is enough, Minho said. The swarm detected their approach. They calculated the threat. 1 damaged ship. Moving slowly. No weapons active. Threat level. Minimal. They ignored it. Fatal mistake. The humans watched as the hive ship grew larger on their screens. It was enormous. A moon converted into a weapon. Its surface was covered in organic technology, writhing and pulsing like a living thing. 10 minutes, Hana said. The Defiant Hope entered the hive ship's point defense range. Weapons fired at them. The ship's shields, barely functional, absorbed what they could. The hull took dozens of hits. Sections depressurized. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically. 5 minutes, Hana reported. We are not going to make it to the core. How close can we get? Minho asked. Jiho calculated quickly. If we maintain course, we can penetrate the outer hull and get maybe a kilometer inside before the reactor goes. Will that be enough? I don't know. Good enough odds for me, Minho said. 2 minutes. The Defiant Hope crashed into the hive ship's surface. The hull tore open. Atmosphere vented. The ship pushed deeper, tearing through the swarm's organic structure. Alarms screamed. Red lights flashed everywhere. 1 minute, Hana said calmly. Minho looked at his crew one last time. I am sorry I got you all killed. You did not get us killed, Suji said with a smile. We chose this. And it is a good death. The best, Yuna agreed. 30 seconds, Hana said. Minho closed his eyes. He thought of Earth. He thought of his family. He thought of humanity's future. Whatever that might be. 10 seconds. He opened his eyes and smiled. 5. The reactor reached critical mass. "See you on the other side," Minho said. The explosion tore through the hive ship like a star being born. The blast traveled through the organic corridors, consuming everything. The hive ship's structure, designed to withstand weapons fire, could not handle the force from inside. Massive sections broke apart. The hive mind that controlled it screamed in pain across dimensions. But more importantly, the neural network that connected all three hive ships was severed. For the first time in 50,000 years, the swarm felt confusion. On Nexus Prime, everyone watched the explosion. The Supreme Chancellor's crystalline body glowed bright with emotion. "They did it," she whispered. "They actually damaged a hive ship." "More than that," the military commander said, studying his displays. "Look at the other two hive ships. They have stopped moving. The swarm is disorganized." "How long will that last?" "Unknown. Minutes, maybe hours if we are lucky." "Then we attack now," the Keeper of Memories said, standing tall despite his age. "The humans bought us time with their lives. We will not waste it. All ships, all weapons, target the confused swarm vessels. End this now." The Council fleet, which had fled in defeat, returned with renewed courage. They fired everything they had at the disorganized swarm. Without coordination, the swarm could not adapt fast enough. Vessels that had been invincible minutes ago exploded by the hundreds. Mireille and the surviving human fighters joined the assault. They were battered, damaged, and exhausted, but they fought on. For 8 minutes, the battle raged. Then the swarm began to recover. The remaining hive ships re-established their connection. Coordination returned. The tide began to turn again, but 8 minutes was enough. The Council fleet had destroyed over 70% of the swarm vessels. The 2 remaining hive ships, damaged and depleted, made a calculation. The cost of continuing was too high. They retreated, jumping to faster than light speed and disappearing into the darkness between stars. Victory, at a terrible price. Mireille landed her fighter on Nexus Prime. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unbuckle her harness. When she finally climbed out, she collapsed on the docking bay floor and cried. She was not alone. All across the station, humans mourned. 50 people had died. 50 friends, family members, crewmates, gone in an instant. The Supreme Chancellor came to the docking bay personally. She looked at the surviving humans with something that might have been respect or might have been guilt. "I am sorry for your loss," she said quietly. Mireille looked up at her with tear-stained eyes. "Are we sorry enough to let us join your council now?" The Supreme Chancellor had no answer to Mireille's question. She stood in the docking bay, surrounded by grieving humans. And for the first time in 3,000 years of leadership, she did not know what to say. The silence was broken by a sound. A distant beeping. Mireille's communication device was receiving a signal. "That is impossible," she whispered, pulling it out with trembling hands. The defiant hope was destroyed. There should be no signal, but there was. Weak, breaking up, but definitely there. "This is emergency beacon. Anyone?" Receiving? The voice was faint but unmistakable. "Engineer Hana." "Hana!" Mireille screamed into her device. "Hana, is that really you, Mireille?" "Oh, thank. We are alive. Barely. But alive." The docking bay erupted into chaos. Humans shouted questions all at once. The Supreme Chancellor immediately contacted her rescue teams. "How?" she demanded. "The explosion should have killed everyone aboard." Through the static, Hana's voice came through, sounding tired and amused. "Humans are very stubborn about dying. Also, I might have disobeyed the captain's orders." Over the next hour, the truth emerged. In the final seconds before the explosion, Hana had done something no one expected. She had rigged the reactor to detonate automatically and secretly activated the ship's emergency escape pods. All 50 crew members had been forcefully ejected in stealthed pods that the swarm's sensors could not detect. The pods had drifted through the battlefield, protected by stealth technology and pure luck. Now they were scattered across the system. But alive. Recovery ships launched immediately. One by one, the pods were retrieved. Captain Minho was in the third pod recovered. When he stepped onto Nexus Prime, still in his damaged suit, he was immediately tackled by Mireille, in a hug that nearly broke his ribs. "You are alive," she sobbed. "Apparently," Minho said, looking dazed. "Hana, did you really?" "I am an engineer, not a soldier," Hana said, as she was helped off her own recovery ship. "You gave me an order to make the reactor explode. You did not say I couldn't save everyone first." "I specifically said everyone stays," Minho argued, but he was smiling. "You said everyone who stays on the ship dies, so I made sure nobody stayed on the ship. Problem solved." Yuna laughed. "You found a loophole in a suicide mission. That is the most human thing I have ever heard," Nari added, checking everyone for injuries despite her own exhaustion. By the end of the day, all 50 humans were recovered. Some had injuries, some had damaged pods that barely functioned, but every single one survived. The council watched in amazement. These beings had faced certain death, and somehow cheated it through cleverness and refusal to accept their fate. The Supreme Chancellor called an emergency session of the council. This time, the humans were invited to stand at the center of the hall. Not as prisoners or supplicants, but as honored guests. "We must vote," the Chancellor said. "Humanity has passed every test we gave them, and more. They solved problems that had stumped our greatest minds. They fought with strategies we could not predict. They showed character beyond what we thought possible. And they faced the galaxy's greatest threat, without hesitation. They also destroyed council property and violated our laws," said a counselor who had voted against humanity from the beginning. "True," the Chancellor acknowledged. "They crashed our summit, broke our shields, and ignored our authority. They are dangerous, unpredictable, and stubborn to the point of insanity. But they are also brave, loyal, and willing to die for strangers. The question before us is simple. Do we want such beings as our enemies or our allies?" The vote was called. In the old system, it would have taken days. But the swarm's attack had changed things. The vote happened immediately. 846 species voted. All but one voted in favor of humanity's admission to the Galactic Council. The single opposing vote came from the same counselor who had objected earlier. When asked why, he simply said, "Because I am terrified of them. But I also realize that is exactly why we need them." Humanity became the 848th member of the Galactic Council. The acceptance ceremony was held 3 days later. Captain Minho stood before the assembly. His crew behind him. He wore a proper uniform now, cleaned and pressed, though he still had bandages from his injuries. The Supreme Chancellor presented him with the symbol of membership, a device that would allow humanity to participate in all council decisions and access all galactic knowledge. "Captain Minho of Earth," she said formally, "on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome humanity to our community. May your species bring wisdom and strength to our union." And for. Unquote. Minho took the symbol. It was heavy in his hands, weighted with responsibility. "Thank you," he said. "On behalf of humanity, I accept this honor. But I want everyone here to understand something." The hall grew quiet. "We are still learning," Minho continued. "We still make mistakes. We are violent when we need to be, stubborn when we should not be, and crazy enough to fight battles we cannot win. We will probably cause problems. We will definitely do things that make no sense to you." He paused, looking around at the thousands of alien beings watching him. "But we are also loyal. If you become our friends, we will stand by you when everyone else runs. If you need help, we will come even when it is stupid to do so. If you are in danger, we will fight for you like you are our own family. That is what it means to be human. We are your allies now, for better or worse." The hall was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, one species began to applaud. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, the entire council was showing their approval in whatever way their species did. Some clapped, Some hummed, some glowed, and some released pleasant scents. Suji leaned close to Minho and whispered, "Was that diplomatic?" "It was honest," Minho replied. "That is more important." The ceremony ended, and the real work began. Humanity had a lot to learn about galactic civilization. The Council assigned teachers and guides. They offered technology, knowledge, and friendship. In return, humans offered something the galaxy had not seen in a long time: hope. Not the quiet hope of peaceful times, but the fierce hope of survivors who refused to give up. 6 months later, 15 new human ships arrived at Nexus Prime. They were better designed than the Defiant Hope but still had that unmistakable human touch, held together with determination and improvisation. Each ship carried diplomats, scientists, engineers, and soldiers ready to take their place in the galaxy. Earth also began cultural exchange programs. Alien students came to visit humanity's death world, protected by environment suits, and were amazed that humans lived there without any protection at all. Human students went to other worlds and were equally amazed by places where the weather did not try to kill you. The most popular human export was not technology or resources, it was entertainment. Humans told stories of struggle and triumph that resonated across the galaxy. They created art about never giving up that inspired species who had forgotten what it meant to fight for something. They also taught combat tactics. The Council's military academies began offering courses in human irregular warfare, the art of fighting without rules or predictability. It was chaos to military minds used to order. But it worked. The swarm did not return. But everyone knew they were still out there, waiting. The Council began preparing for the next encounter. And this time, they had an advantage they never had before. An ally who did not know when to quit. Minho became humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. He served for 10 years before retiring and returning to Earth. His crew followed him, each becoming legends in their own right. Hana became the head of humanity's engineering corps, designing ships that the galaxy had never seen before. Yuna founded the first human-alien joint military academy. Suji wrote the definitive guide to galactic diplomacy, which included a chapter titled, "Sometimes You Have to Crash the Party." Jiho led scientific collaborations that revolutionized several fields by introducing human creativity to alien logic. Nari established medical facilities that combined human stubbornness with alien technology, saving lives that would have been lost before. Mireille became an instructor, teaching thousands of pilots that survival mattered more than following the rules. And Do-hyun continued finding patterns where others saw chaos, becoming the Council's chief tactical advisor. On the day Minho left Nexus Prime for the last time, the Supreme Chancellor came to see him off personally. "You changed the galaxy," she said simply. "We just showed up," Minho replied. "You did the changing yourselves." "No," she insisted. "Before you, we were comfortable. We thought we had reached the peak of civilization. But you reminded us that there is always room to grow. Always something new to learn. Always a reason to keep fighting, even if it means crashing a few doors?" Minho asked with a smile. The Supreme Chancellor's crystalline body glowed with what might have been laughter, especially then. As his ship prepared to leave, Minho looked back at Nexus Prime. It looked different now. More alive. Somehow. There were human banners hanging next to alien ones. Human music played in the corridors alongside songs from across the galaxy. Human food was served in restaurants next to dishes from 1,000 worlds. Humanity had not just joined the Galactic Council. They had become part of it, bringing all their chaos, bravery, and stubborn refusal to accept the impossible. The galaxy would never be the same. And deep in the darkness between stars, the void swarm stirred. They remembered the pain of defeat. They remembered the species that had hurt them. They began to adapt, to prepare, to plan. But the galaxy was preparing too. And this time, they had humans on their side. The swarm was about to learn an important lesson about Earth's children. Humans did not just survive on a death world, they thrived there. And now they had brought that same deadly persistence to the stars. The galaxy's supreme predator had met its match, and the match was just getting started.